Hey everybody, long time no talk to. Brian Good here with the latest on the earliest alert blog updates. Several things to cover, no surprise there. So let's dive right into it, shall we? We've had a few sprinkles, brief little downpours. Yeah, a couple of strikes of lightning this morning in northern counties. It's a little wave of moisture kind of pulling ahead of a boundary. It's off to the northwest of us. That's now aiming itself more toward the big sandy area of Kentucky and Ohio there. We should be mainly dry here for the rest of the afternoon. Our main focus is really not only just the cirrus clouds we've got now. It kept us up temperature-wise overnight. I think 76 may end up being our low, maybe 75. But then as we head to the midday period, it may add some haze to it, so it may counteract some of the heating this afternoon. But still, it's going to be a hot day. Now, the issue for the afternoon, a couple of things. One, we have this complex of thunderstorms now that is through Illinois and moving into Indiana. That should track more east than south, and I'll show you why that is in the case in a second. But it also will allow for a little boundary here, outflow boundary, to redevelop this afternoon. So a little more to the south, the activity will fire up on the radar for this afternoon and evening, and that's something we'll be watching for the overnight period. Now, the Storm Prediction Center at the moment has the slight risk mainly across where the MCS, if you will, the mesoscale convective system, is going to aim more east than south. That's why the risk areas don't dive toward the Ohio River. They generally go east. All right. Now, tomorrow, they are closer to us. And some of the data I'm looking at would argue that it may have to be just a bit more to I-64, but that's splitting hairs at this point. Let me show you a couple of the high-res models. Here's the HER model showing how it goes more into Ohio for the afternoon activity. But it leaves behind that tail, and you will see hints of that beginning to redevelop this afternoon on I-70, and that activity will try to drop in. But here's the problem. We have a lot of warm air aloft, which is allowing for the cap to keep us protected. Also, the moisture is not as plentiful here as what it is across I-70. So there's several negating factors for these thunderstorms that they want to move south, but the better moisture content is really where they are. And if the dew points were higher over Kentucky than, say, I-70, I would say, okay, well, we need to watch for this to dive all the way down to our area and remain on the strong side. But that doesn't appear to be the case with this kind of a setup as it appears now. The RPM model, very similar idea, more to the east into Ohio, develops that boundary along I-70 that reignites later this afternoon at the overnight and then kind of just fades out. But where that fades tonight around sunrise, or tomorrow morning, I should say, around sunrise, will be the starting point tomorrow. And I think it's why it's going to be angled, and that's why the marginal is kind of iffy on where that will be drawn on the southern side, because it really just depends on where the boundary sets up shop overnight tonight. Once we know where that is, then obviously that's where the marginal will be drawn. Not a big deal. I just want to bring it to your attention. And then activity will continue through most of the day, again, mainly to the north. And the reason for that is the upper level energy is still dominant west to east, and that is going to keep a lot of activity mainly out of our backyards. Now, the mid-level winds a bit stronger and more to the south, and that's the reason why we can't run a few of these working their way into Indiana and close to, say, Cincinnati of the next couple of days if these outflow boundaries can work out that way. But the more south you are, the better the chances are you'll be just fine. And even as we look into Wednesday, mid-level and upper air energy, wind energy, is far from us. In fact, I was tempted, I got 94 in for the high. I was tempted to go higher than that. But because we are fairly green with the recent rainfall, I didn't want to go as high as some of the models indicate. So I think 94 is where I'm going to keep it. We'll see what Kevin and Kevin and Ryan look at later today to see whether or not that needs to be adjusted. But having said that, that also means the humidity will be fairly high. So I do think the heat index could certainly get up there, 98, maybe 99 for a while Wednesday. So Wednesday looks to be the hottest and the driest day. Now, as we head into the longer term here, and I somehow another bypassed a couple of graphics. I apologize. Let me back it up. Back this up. Okay, so Wednesday, talked about, it's fine. Now Thursday, that's when the front that's been teasing us up here around I-70 is going to drop down to our area and push through. Now, keep in mind, as I've said many times, it is hard to get a cold front through the Ohio Valley and down into Tennessee in the summer months, especially in July. But this one's going to do it. It's going to be a slow progression, but it's going to move through here Thursday, Friday, and Friday night should be south of the parkways. There's not a lot of mid-level wind energy, though. So organized severe weather is not impressive at this point by that factor alone. And that's why we are not currently outlooked from the Storm Prediction Center. However, there is a lot of moisture in the air to work with. That's going to lead to high instability. So I do think we're going to be finding ourselves with these pulse-type clusters of thunderstorms Thursday afternoon, evening, into Friday. And yes, some could produce warnings. Whether or not we can get them organized enough to go into a watch category to where organized warnings may take place in some spots, that's questionable. It's only Monday. We'll see how it all looks. But here's the good news. That front moves in, and we get a dry pocket of air just in time for Saturday. Soak it up, because this is a 1-2 punch. There's a second front that's going to move in. Sneaky little devil. It's going to move in here at some point Sunday. Now, the GFS is trying to trend faster in it being sunrise Sunday morning with another round of maybe some showers and thunderstorms. Other models are a bit slower. We'll try to figure out how much of a gap in time we're going to have between these two fronts. That will determine how nice your Saturday will be and really how nice Sunday will be. Questionable there. But we'll see how that plays out when we get closer for the weekend. So if you have weekend plans, and I'm sure you do, just stay tuned. That's the issue for the weekend, is the 1-2 punch. When's that second piece going to come in? Then after that, it's going to be a nice, pleasant forecast, looks like, for Monday. That really dry air. It's going to feel really good on Monday, a week from today. Saturday, yeah, it'll be drier, but I still think it'll feel somewhat humid. But a week from today, that's when you'll notice it. Then we lead into the heat. Now, we're going to see the core of the heat. Here's the models and ensembles, GFS, Euro, and the Canadian. If you're first time seeing this. The pink area basically is just hot. All right, we're talking about mid-90s in the plains. The Euro really is going game busters in the idea. So is its ensemble. This is not a Bermuda high, because the high normally this time of year, into August especially, but even in July, you would see it centered more over the eastern United States and the western Atlantic, or Bermuda. But it's more in the central plains. So the heat is going to try to attack us next week, and the potential is there for it to be the hottest we've been so far this year, and probably the most consecutive days at 90 or higher. 4 so far is what we've had. In June, we may exceed that if this ridge does build in. Doesn't look to last long, though, because ignore the top row, but you start to see that the ridge breaks down after the 21st, 22nd or so of July, and we get back into a very familiar pattern where it's hot in the southern plains and the southwest, and we get more cold fronts into the Ohio Valley. That is plausible. Now, keep in mind, when we have that ridge, though, intact, the models are going to go nuts with the tropics. GFS, Canadian, Euro are all going to go crazy because it's a good setup for the tropical activity to increase across the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. We'll play that by year 2 once we head down the road. The one reason why I exercise some caution on that ridge for next week really is that the models are having a tough time, including the PNA. This is from the Euro, and you can see how it's been bouncing around all over the place. If you're south of the black line, that's more the heat wave idea. If you're north of it, it's more of a cooling trend. And the past several runs have been kind of all over the place. So confidence is not very high, but at least we're getting better agreement today compared to previous dates. Stay tuned. We'll update you guys coming up tomorrow.